Roundup. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the February 2023 WordPress News Roundup here on iThemes Training. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the host here at iThemes Training, and every month we take a look across the WordPress world and we pick several of the things that we feel like are worth talking about. We have a lot to talk about this month. All the news that we talk about is generally from the perspective of people who are building and managing WordPress sites for clients. And so we kind of filter out some things based on that. But wow, we have a lot this month. We typically have somewhere between 90 and 100 slides. And this month there's 119. So there's a lot. And we're probably going to run a little bit long today, if I had to guess. So let's get started right away. By the way, if you're just joining us in Zoom, I'm going to drop in the link to today's slides. If you're watching this on the replay, they're down below in the download handout button. The link to the replay is also there in the chat if you want to go back and look at the transcript or slide notes or any of that stuff. It'll be there about an hour after we wrap up today. So let's get started. No further delay with some news from Core. The release of WordPress 6.2 is pressing right along. Beta 1 has been released and it is ready for testing. You can actually download that from WordPress.org. The upcoming major release is going to roll in the last 9 Gutenberg plugin releases, which include 292 editor enhancements and 354 bug fixes. They finally do take the beta label away from the site editor for the full site editing experience. As of now, the open issues that required resolution to remove the beta label remain. So they just decided to remove the label. That's okay. Contributors have created a detailed testing guide. You can read all about that there just to make sure it's going to work with all of your things. Let's look at some of the highlights coming from the 6.2 release. Some of these things, by the way, are Gutenberg focused, which means we've covered those in the last several weeks of the news roundup with these new features of the Gutenberg plugin. So there is this new distraction-free mode that we talked about several weeks ago. It's pretty cool. Distraction-free has been something that's been in core WordPress until Gutenberg, but now it is back. So you have that really nice, clean layout. If you just want to write a blog post, you can do that and swap in and out pretty easily. We also have a new improvements to the nav block, figuring out how to arrange and deal with the navigation block in the full site editing world has been complicated, and they've done a pretty good job of solving it. So now over in the list view, you can grab your navigation block. You have the menu items over on the right. You can drag and drop and move those around. You can lock those blocks as well. I think it's about to do that. Yep, we can lock this block in place to disable movement or disable deletion, all of that. So pretty cool stuff. It's relatively simple once you see how it works to get your hands around this full site editing. So the schedule is on track. Beta 1 dropped last week. Beta 2 drops today. I'm not sure if it is out at the time of this broadcast, but it will be later today if it's not already. Then beta 3 and 4 on the next couple of weeks. Then you see the release candidate drops coming up in March with the dry run on March 27th. And the final WordPress 6.2 release is scheduled for March 28th, about 6 weeks from today. Josepha Hayden-Chumfosi, who's the executive director of the WordPress project, has laid out some big picture goals for Core in 2023. Of course, there's a big focus on the WordPress CMS itself, completing the main tasks for phase 2 of the Gutenberg project and beginning the exploratory work for phase 3 of Gutenberg. When it comes to the WordPress community, a focus on re-engaging our community through learning events, celebrating our 20th year as a project. How many of you knew that WordPress turns 20 this year? Indeed, it does. And also updating the distribution methods and mechanisms for Core in the WordPress ecosystem. So some of the big focuses here within the CMS are a lot of work on APIs to let WordPress talk better to other things, bringing in Openverse search to Core. We're going to have another slide about that in a minute. Openverse, you may know, is the old Creative Commons library, which was acquired by Automatic last year, I believe, at some point, and has been relabeled Openverse and is now available to search in Core. It's pretty cool. So the navigation block is, they're working on that. We just saw some slides about that. An improvement in the media management. That's a long time coming. Simplifying the process of making releases, focusing on PHP 8.2 for both Core and Gutenberg. Block theme development tools and focusing on custom CSS. and so forth. So a lot of work yet to be done this year on the WordPress CMS itself. As far as community goes, more focus on community summit planning and coordination. This is an event that precedes WordCamp US in August of this year in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of other things that the community is going to be focusing on, including refinement of Polyglot, the multi-language tools. It's part of one of the future stages of Gutenberg, as well as this development of a canonical plugin program that we talked about last month. In other words, a way to set apart a plugin that is community supported. It's sort of it's a feature that you might want to be part of core WordPress, but it doesn't quite rise to that level. So it is like a canonical plugin. For example, the one we talked about last month was the WebP by default. So instead of including that in core, it's not going to be a canonical plugin that is supported by the community itself. Within the WordPress ecosystem, there's more work being devoted to the WordPress Playground, which is that in-browser, the single browser, no database WordPress experience. Pretty cool stuff. And then continuing to work on some of the others as well. So a lot of interesting goals. I'd encourage you to read Josepha's blog post there at the link below. Now, we had a couple of interesting releases of the Gutenberg plugin over the last couple of weeks. Gutenberg 15.0 dropped January 18th. The block inspector tabs experiment has been stabilized. So this was something that was released last month, as I recall, taking a look at changing the way the right-hand column of the block editor worked with some sort of a tabbed type interface. So you can turn on the off canvas navigation editor, and you'll see a view tab. Now, this is within the Gutenberg plugin. It's not yet in core, but you can turn off that experiment under the Gutenberg icon, and you'll see a list tab that looks something like this. So you now have this tabbed approach to the way the information there on the right-hand sidebar is laid out. I like it a lot, and that's available. It's ready to play with now. It's pretty cool. They've also added a paste styles option, which is really nice. You can create multiple blocks with identical styling, copy a block, and then just paste the styling of that block onto another block, and it's available there in the drop-down menu. Here's how that looks. So let's say we got a couple of paragraph blocks. We're going to make the background light gray and the text purple. So look, we can copy the block and then go down to this next one and just click paste styles, and boom, you get the styles moved right into the other block. So that is pretty cool and should make it easier to do all the things block. So there's now some work that's been done on the block style variation from within the global styles. You can change the styles of buttons and images and site logos that only apply to that variation of the particular blocks that actually have variations. So here's a button, for example. We can go into our block. We can change the variation right there and just change the border of this particular one. So we've had block variations, but if you change the style, it would go across all of them. So in this case, we can now just change the block itself that we're looking on. Pretty cool. They've also added a new sticky position block or support for a sticky position block. And so this is a block that would stay put as you scroll down the screen. It works really well. So here, for example, we're going to select this group at the top, click the settings, go down to position, and choose sticky. Boom, that is now sticky. And as we scroll, look, it sticks in place. So that's now in this the drop of Gutenberg that released last month. So pretty cool stuff. The sidebar now allows you to resize in the site editor, which is a pretty big deal, honestly, because sometimes it gets a little squinched over there. And so this seems like a simple thing, but it wasn't supported until now to actually be able to change the width of that sidebar area to make it a little more usable when you have a lot of stuff stacked up over there. Another little fix that's a big deal in Gutenberg 15 was that images are now constrained to their container. So if you've used the block editor, you might have found that if you drag the image and resize it, the image can actually go outside the bounds of the container that it was in. Now that's changed so that it stays inside the container no matter what. Even if you drag it way off the screen, it still pops into the correct size of the container that it is in. There's also now some changes made to the canvas mode within the site editor itself, which are pretty good. Also, the copy and cut shortcuts now work in the site editor as well. They didn't. So those are some minor things that can really help to use the site editor. The next version of Gutenberg released a week ago on February the 8th. That's Gutenberg 15.1. Now, this is where it gets fun. Openverse is now integrated into the inserter. Now, the inserter is the little plus icon, the place where you can insert things. So you can now, right from within core WordPress, if you're using Gutenberg. Now, again, this will be rolled into the next version of WordPress, but for now, it's only in the Gutenberg plugin. You can access Openverse search from right there in the block editor. So you can search the huge collection of totally free stock photography. If you click on the image, it'll be inserted as an image block with the proper attribution and license in the caption. That is pretty cool. So here's how this works. You can see a search for stars and a bunch of stuff pops in. And if you were to click one of these images, all the appropriate attribution would bump into the caption. So you don't have to do any of that stuff. It just automatically works. Pretty cool. In Gutenberg 15, the global styles option now also has some shadow presets: natural, crisp, sharp, and soft. You can also define custom shadow presets in the theme.json file. So look, here's how this works. We got a button and we have shadow options. Isn't that spiffy? So that's kind of nice. You can imagine that themes will start to use this functionality to build in shadows that work within, for example, the design that you're working in. That would be easy for theme developers to do. This is also a really excellent addition to Gutenberg, where now custom CSS can be added on a per block basis, meaning that instead of having to just go add something that applies to the entire site, you can go into the settings of a block and look, you can add additional CSS just to this block. That is pretty cool. It's been needed for quite a while, actually. Some other things that happen in Gutenberg 15.1, navigation has been added to the site editor sidebar, so you can get around right there within the site editor to deal with your navigation menus. They start to appear here, and all the defined menus on a site show up here, and you can click into those and do what you need to do right from the site editor without having to bounce back and out into the menus area. There are also some new menu options for copying and pasting styles between blocks. This is pretty cool. You can copy the style of a particular block and jump it in another one. Also, featured images in the templates can themselves be resized, and you can set options for cover, contain, fill, just to make all that work really well. So a lot of things are happening. These two releases of Gutenberg have some really important features, and I would encourage you to play around with them. There's a lot to learn, a lot to see, especially with that metaverse search. It's a game changer for WordPress. So again, remember, to see these Gutenberg enhancements, you do have to have the Gutenberg plugin installed on your site, but be aware, Gutenberg plugin is beta, and it's really probably not something you want to run on a live site that's super important, because it is a beta plugin and sometimes things change and break, etc. All right, let's pivot to some security news. We have a lot to talk about in the security world, starting off with our monthly vulnerability report. 96 vulnerabilities were patched. This number, thank you, Chris, should be 36 plugin vulnerabilities are currently active, or the plugin has been closed. No theme vulnerabilities in the last month. That's pretty cool. This comes from iThemes Security, of course, and we have this great feature called Site Scan that scans your site twice a day to look for any vulnerable themes and plugins, and that will let you know if you have a vulnerability. Also, if you have the pro version of iThemes Security, you can set it in the version management feature to automatically apply the update if a vulnerable theme or plugin has an update ready to be patched. So without anything, you don't have to do anything at all other than turn that feature on. iThemes Security Pro keeps your website patched and working. So pretty cool stuff. I have some interesting news about the site scan coming later in the security section. A bunch of these plugins were vulnerable and closed. This means that they are actively vulnerable. There is a real problem, and these plugins should be removed from your website. Don't just deactivate them, delete them, because even if they're deactivated, the code is still there on your server, and could potentially be exploited. So just delete them all together. Amazon JS, AMR shortcode any widget, Bootstrap shortcodes, Corios official, custom ad user, download video sidebar, easy PayPal button, easy social box, embed PDF, Fleer, Feelbox, galleries, GigPress, human add-ons, intuitive custom post order, list pages shortcode, login, logout menu, MapWiz, markup, Yandex Maps, OLEV Media shortcodes, 0MK shortener, opening hours, page builder, live composer, post views count, show hide, collapse, expand, simple file downloader, 2020 image before, user activity, video.js, widget shortcode, widgets on pages, WP responsive testimonials, WP top bar, YARP, YouTube channel gallery, and the YouTube shortcode. So if you're using any of those plugins, you better do something about them. This one, by the way, for all of you OG old time iThemes members, we used to use widget shortcode a lot back in the iThemes builder days to make things a little bit easier. That shortcode, that plugin is actively vulnerable and needs to be dealt with. So be aware of that. Okie dokie. You may or may not have heard that there is, as of yesterday, this was just announced yesterday, there is a 0-day threat to all Apple devices. So yesterday, Apple rolled out security updates for iOS, iPadOS, macOS, and the Safari browser to address a vulnerability that is being actively exploited in the wild. It's related to the WebKit browser engine. And this is a big deal because Apple requires WebKit to be used by on any third-party app or anything that has an in-browsing experience on its platform. The macOS update also fixes a potential problem in the shortcuts function. You should update all of your devices immediately. Sue is saying, why doesn't her phone show an update to install? It probably because it already installed it. So I don't have the, I didn't put down the versions that have been patched of all these, but just Google it, and it's likely that that patch was already applied for you. So that is happening. There's also a incident in Mailchimp. You may have heard about this. This was the end of last month. A third-party vendor's software was exploited, which compromised a limited number of Mailchimp user accounts. The information that was accessed was username, email address, and account settings, no financial data or anything like that. This was a big deal because hacks like this, where they didn't really get any quote unquote valuable information, like there's no credit card information at risk. But the problem is they now know that you have a Mailchimp account, what your username is, what your email address is. And so it's these sorts of attacks that can lead to social engineering attacks where they pretend to be Mailchimp to get you to provide your credentials. So that's out there. Be aware of that. And if you use Mailchimp, just know that that's a thing. If you have clients, maybe let them know to be especially mindful of any emails that purport to be from Mailchimp that want their credentials. Mailchimp took immediate action to secure the affected accounts and prevent any future incidents. They informed the affected users, and they're offering free identity theft protection and credit monitoring services. Pardon me. They're working with law enforcement and cybersecurity experts to investigate. They suggest that you enable two-factor authentication and review account activity for anything suspicious. All right. In other news related to security and passwords, LastPass now faces the first of potentially a lot of class action lawsuits over the LastPass breach that unfolded at the end of last year. In early January, a lawsuit was filed in Massachusetts District Court, Federal District Court, by an anonymous LastPass user. The plaintiff is concerned about the risk of phishing emails, scams, and fraud due to the possibility of a hacker cracking the master password due to their individual vaults with improved password cracking algorithms. This particular user who filed the lawsuit suspects the breach might have led a hacker to steal $53,000 in Bitcoin from him over the Thanksgiving weekend. Private keys to his cryptocurrency transactions were stored on LastPass. It's unknown if there's any proof of that, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the kind of class action lawsuit that we started predicting a while back. There will probably be others. We'll see what happens there. Continuing forward, iThemes published the annual 2022 WordPress vulnerability report. Some really good information here. I would suggest that you read this blog post. It is quite good, and it gives you some good numbers about the WordPress security landscape. Here are some trends. 2% of all plugins had 99% of the vulnerabilities. Isn't that interesting? So when people talk about, oh, WordPress is just inherently insecure. No, 2% of the plugins available had 99% of the vulnerabilities. So that tells you a lot. Every week, vulnerabilities, there were 20 to 50 new vulnerabilities in plugins and themes. Every month, on the average, 121 plugins and themes had a vulnerability. The severity of the vulnerabilities declined significantly compared to last year, which is really good, or 2021, which is really good. Only 26% of plugin and theme vulnerabilities were unpatched at the time of their disclosure. So this is also very good, meaning what this means is that when a vulnerability is discovered, it's reported, and the reporting agency will contact the theme or plugin developer saying, hey, you should fix this. And they give them a certain amount of time to fix it before the vulnerability is published. They don't want to publish the vulnerability without allowing the developer to fix it, because otherwise, like the hackers could just read the vulnerability list and they can exploit the plugin. So most of the plugins were patched ahead of time, which is really good. Cross-site scripting vulnerabilities were the most prevalent, and they represented 73% of all vulnerabilities. XSS, CSFR, and the SQLite vulnerabilities were where things mostly occurred. Now, some other interesting things. 2022 saw medium to low risk ratings for 71% of all the vulnerabilities we tracked. So that's pretty good. So of all the vulnerabilities out there, most were medium or low. Only 4% rated critical. Now, you could also look at it from the other perspective of going this way. 79% were either medium, high, or critical. So, it depends on which direction you analyze this poll to see what's important. So high and critical, really, only 1 in 3 were high or critical. So that's pretty good. And you can see that the levels of the threat levels declined from 2021 to 2022. So far less major issues. 26% of the vulnerabilities remain unpatched. We talked about that right there. So there's some numbers that back up that stat. This will show you some of the top threat vectors. It's mostly cross-site scripting. We see that all over the place. Also the cross-site forgery and SQL injections. That shows you where all the things happen. So over 400 plugins and themes using the Freemius framework were affected by single vulnerability. This is some of the big things that happened last year. If you remember that Freemius vulnerability, that was back mid-year or so. We also had those 5 million Elementor users experience a critical vulnerability and several other vulnerabilities that were patched. Ninja Forms also had a big deal. And of course, our own Backup Buddy had a high severity vulnerability. And we responded to that by getting that update out quickly and even making that, pushing that update to users, even if they had licenses expired. And if you were using iThemes Sync, we automatically pushed the version out to all your sites that were in sync, so you didn't have to touch anything. So that was a big deal, and it was dealt with. All right, so talking about iThemes, let's move into some news from iThemes. I'm really excited about this premium event for this month, which is actually 1 week earlier than it normally is. Normally, our premium events here on iThemes Training are the last week of the month. Because of scheduling, we had to get Maddie here next week. So that is next Tuesday and Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. each day. This is our website content workshop. So day 1 is going to talk all about content UX, information architecture best practices, looking at the Google Quality Rater guidelines, and then getting some consistency together with a brand style guide. Day 2 is going to focus on processes for content and design, like how, which comes first, content or design. What could an intake process look like for content and design to surface all the relevant details, like asking the right questions up front so you're designing the right things, and then how to create a content wireframe as part of the design process. Maddie is a great teacher. She is a known commodity in the WordPress writing world. She writes for many big brands in the WordPress space, and she's just great to listen to. So that's going to be a lot of fun next week. That is for members. You can sign up here. By the way, if you're not a member of iThemes Training, you get 30 days free. So sign up. It's going to be a great event, and you can take part in that at no cost at all. The March event is yours truly, talking about the Web Foundations workshop. This is going to be a lot of fun. We did this one about 18 months ago, and it's time to refresh this one and deal with some of these topics again. Day 1, these are the 4 of the things that most often confuse those of us that build and manage websites. So we're going to talk DNS. We're going to talk redirects. We're going to talk about transactional email and making sure that emails from WordPress don't end up in the spam box. And last of all, optimizing images in WordPress. So 4 very important topics. That's the end of March next month here on iThemes Training, again, for members. A few things coming up here on iThemes Training. We have tomorrow is the Fly 2023 course talking about work habits. Then office hours, of course, the website content workshop we talked about, and then followed by office hours. We actually have another webinar that I just added, and I forgot to update this slide. So this is March the 28th. We just scheduled this. If you are a user of the events calendar, we have Jeff Bellinger, who's done a number of events calendar webinars and cadence webinars for us. We just added this one with the new events calendar automator. It is a fantastic little piece of software. Just dropping the link there in the chat. You can register for this free webinar. It basically lets you do automations based on your events calendar plugin. So selling tickets, doing like if somebody buys a ticket, you can do some things with it with Zapier and other automations. It's a really cool really cool tool. And I'd encourage you to come watch Jeff talk us through it. And that is on February the 28th. All right, let's see here. Again, if you're not a member of iThemes Training, you can join free for 30 days at iThemes.com/training. Looking at a couple of other things from iThemes, we talked about this. We had a great webinar with Timothy Jacobs last month about the new CAPTCHA options in iThemes Security. The Cloudflare Turnstile and HCAPTCHA are now part of iThemes Security. You can use either of those or the classic Google reCAPTCHA if you would like. Cloudflare Turnstile is a game changer. It is really, really good. We're starting to use that throughout the sites that we manage. So if you missed that webinar, there's a blog post there that talks all about it. It's really good stuff. I would encourage you to read through that blog post and to watch the webinar. Also, Turnstile is now available in the Cadence CAPTCHA plugin. So even if you don't use iThemes Security and you want to make use of the Cloudflare Turnstile CAPTCHA replacement, you can download the Cadence CAPTCHA plugin and you can get Turnstile connectivity right there as well. All right, another big change for iThemes Security users. You may have noticed this in vulnerability reports. Last week, we announced that we are partnering with PatchStack to power the iThemes Security Site Scan. Now, Site Scan is that function in iThemes Security that alerts site owners if a version of a plugin or theme that we're using has a known vulnerability. So it scans the site twice a day and then lets you know. Previously, we used the WP Scan database, and now we've partnered with PatchStack, which is a better fit for us as a company. One of the things that is really great about PatchStack is that we're going to get a 48-hour heads up if there's a new vulnerability. So before it even goes public, the iThemes Security Scan will know this is one of those themes or plugins that has a vulnerability that's not public yet, but if the developer has patched it, it's going to go ahead and patch it using the version management feature in iThemes Security Pro. So this is really great. 48-hour heads up, really good. PatchStack is a leader in WordPress security. If you're not familiar with them, check them out at patchstack.com. They've got a reputation for openness and collaboration, and we're just thrilled to be partnering with them. You'll notice the PatchStack logo up here in the vulnerability report if you have a problem on your site. All right. Those of you that are Cadence users, do we have Cadence users in the house? I know we do. Cadence Blocks 3 is slated for next week, likely Monday. Woohoo! It's coming. Yesterday, Cadence Blocks 3 release candidate 1 was released for testing. Major update to Cadence Blocks, which introduces grid CSS and many new UI improvements. It was originally planned for launch last month, but the goal has been to release this product that is backwards compatible and bug-free. And when you really kind of take the guts out of it and put grid CSS back in its place, that's a lot of work. And so Ben and the team at Cadence have been working hard on this. It is now scheduled for Monday, February the 20th. So here's some of the things you can expect in Cadence Blocks 3. A whole new block settings layout that makes development faster. This is beautiful. I mean, look at this. Beautiful tabbed interface here that's very similar to the Gutenberg tabbed interface that you saw earlier, where you can change the number of columns and how they work and the gutter and all the things and the set. It's just a beautiful new interface. The row layouts are now going to use CSS Grid, like we mentioned, for more robust layouts. So you can see how all of this works. You can bump into your advanced settings and you get to preview the gutter and so forth between the columns. It's really amazing. The new advanced form block, which the blog post here, if you haven't read this blog post, you should. The blog post talks about this being the feature that the Kadence team is the most excited about. It's completely rewritten from the ground up. Kathy Zant says this advanced form block is going to put WordPress form plugins on notice. Like, it is amazing. It runs in its own custom post type. You can, so I haven't played with it yet, but I'm looking forward to. You can also, within the new Kadence Blocks 3, import, export, and reset block defaults easier. And there's so much more. This is going to be a wonderful addition to the Kadence lineup. Can't wait to play with it for real. All right, let's move into some plugin news. We've been talking about this for several months, this SQLite integration for WordPress. So this is the in-browser, essentially, WordPress, where it doesn't require a database. SQLite, or SQLite, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, one or the other. It runs essentially out of a flat text file. So this is ideal for simple websites, like brochure-type websites that don't have a lot of pages, not a lot of detail. It's just, you know, sort of a static, more or less static site. It's faster, it's more secure, running out of this SQLite approach. So it also, if you're a developer, it's going to make it easier to test applications and spin up dev environments. Pretty cool stuff. So take a look at this. If you're not familiar yet with SQLite, you should read this article from WP Tavern. Also, the plugin is available out there, ready to go in the WordPress plugin directory. Pretty cool stuff. If you are a Yoast SEO user, you might have noticed a few little changes in the Yoast admin interface. I kind of like it, actually. They realized that the old interface really was old, and they wanted to totally refresh the Yoast SEO interface. Took me a minute to figure out where everything was and how it worked, but after I did, I really, really liked it. They reorganized the sidebar menu for the plugin. They didn't add any new features. They just sort of moved them around so that they're easier to find, and it's a quicker workflow. Fewer clicks to get to the most used features. Quick search, which is really helpful. Yoast Devalk said we felt the WordPress default admin design just didn't work for us anymore, and it looks sort of like this. Pretty nice, actually. The quick search up there is super helpful, especially as you're like, where do they put this? Just start typing, and much like the iThemes security interface, the features just appear magically that you're looking for. Pretty cool. Here's how it looks in the posts interface to see how the post should look. Pretty nice. There's also a lot of conversation happening around WooCommerce blocks. The dev team at WooCommerce has now started a monthly block chat. They're calling on their dev community to join a new monthly chat focused on WooCommerce block extensibility. So if you're doing WooCommerce things, you might want to poke your head in there and see what's going on. The first 3 months are focusing on the cart and checkout blocks and improving those. You can learn more there at woocommerce.com/community-slack. All this is going to happen in the WooCommerce Slack channel. Let's talk a bit about SEO, shall we? We've been talking a lot about AI here on iThemes training. And the pushback has always been, well, you're not supposed to use, any sort of automated AI processes to generate content for your website. And Google has now clarified that this isn't exactly true. At Google, they say, we've long believed in the power of AI to transform the ability to deliver helpful information. Google's ranking systems aim to reward original, high-quality content that demonstrates the qualities of what we call EAT, which is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. In other words, it's good content, right? So instead of banning content generation sources, we choose to reward high-quality content. So basically what Google is saying here is it's not really the issue of where the content comes from. It's the end product that really matters. So using AI to produce content for the purposes of manipulating rank does violate their spam policies, but using AI as part of a process that creates original, high quality, people first content is acceptable. You may remember in the last month's news roundup, we featured what was happening at Bankrate. Bankrate is one of the big properties in the financial services content world. And they've started using AI And they even say in the byline, this article was generated using automated processes and thoroughly fact-checked by a staff editor. That's what I think you're going to see more and more happening in the content world. So there's a great post here all about these things, and there's a helpful fact there if you want to learn more about it. All right. So Google is beginning to set up GA4 for you. Now, we just had some fun there. But yeah, so maybe you got one of these emails. An email was sent in the last few weeks to all users of Google Analytics. Google announced that they're going to begin automatically setting up basic GA4 properties for all UA properties that don't have an associated GA4 property with them. So Universal Analytics is just going to stop working on July the 1st. Like, it's done. That data doesn't carry forward. So Google is saying, starting in March, we're going to start automatically setting up a GA4 property for you so you have some historical data. So they recommend setting up GA4 now to maximize historical data, as the UA data will cease to exist and it is not migratable. So it's done. Like, it's over July 1st. So we've been recommending now for months. Actually, we started recommending this last summer during our Google Analytics bootcamp with David Zimmerman to start, set up Google Analytics 4 so you have historical data when this end of thing, the end of life happens for Universal Analytics. So maybe you've got that email. They're starting to talk about it. Now, as I talked more to David about this past week, it's important, like, who knows how they're going to set these properties up, and it may not be the way you want it. So if it was me, I wouldn't personally allow Google to set it up for me automatically. I would just go ahead and start, every week doing a few properties, getting them, getting GA4 added to them to start tracking the analytics. That's what I would recommend doing. Another leading search engine in the world is Yandex. This is Russia's largest search engine, and other points in Asia really lean on the Yandex search engine. A bit of their data was leaked by an alleged former employee. We'll see. But this data contained 1,900 factors that were used by Yandex for ranking websites and search results. Now, why does it matter? Because a lot of these search engines share the same sort of factors, and what they learned from the Yandex leak might point towards some of the things in Google. For example, there were useful insights to better help us understand how search engines work from a technical standpoint. Yandex, of course, denies it was a hack. They said the data first appeared on a known hacker site. 64% of the factors in the data were listed as inactive or deprecated by Yandex. I don't know. You can still download it right there. Take a look at it if you're curious. Rather interesting. Some of the ranking factors are number of unique visitors, percentage of organic traffic, and average domain ranking across queries. So I don't know. Take a look at it if you're into SEO. Could be interesting. Okay, this is my least favorite news story of the day. Google Cloud has changed Google never changes names or anything, right? Ever. Like, it's always the same. Like, they never change their names. But in this weird situation, Google Data Studio is now being called Looker Studio. Now, I'm just going to state for the record that I will probably never call it that. Like, I'm going to call it Google Data Studio probably forever because I hate this name, but they didn't ask me. So anyway, October 2022, Google has unified all its business intelligence tools under the Looker brand. Looker is a company that it acquired last year, I believe. It will now be the face of all existing Google Cloud data analytics programs. That includes Data Studio, which is now Looker Studio. Google acquired Looker, there it is, in 2020, and has been working on this alignment since that time, combining all its analytics offerings under one umbrella. Google wants to provide users with more functionality than traditional dashboards. So there's your Looker Studio. Don't you just love it? Okay, new section of news we've added this month, and that is AI news. Really happy about this. We've been talking a lot about AI here on iThemes Training. We had a fun webinar about that last week. Let's talk about some AI news, shall we? ChatGPT users topped 100 million in January, and investors are betting big on AI. This is an article in Barron's, a mainstream financial publication. So 100 million users in January, up from 57 million in December for ChatGPT. Absolutely amazing. Venture capitalists are speculating the market for generative AI application could be as large as $1 trillion. Unbelievable. In January, Microsoft expanded its investment in OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, by $10 billion over multiple years. The fear on the street, Wall Street, is that natural language search in the style of ChatGPT poses the first real threat to both Google's share of the search market and its primary monetization engine, which is search-related advertising. Interesting. Interesting. Will ChatGPT replace Google? We already know that Bing is incorporating the next version of ChatGPT into its own search engine. That's why Microsoft is investing so heavily in OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. So we'll see what happens. Now, here's the thing. In an interesting little bit of news, Google's shares have dropped $100 billion after its chatbot failed in a demo. So Google is not new to the world of AI. They've been working on their own chatbot called Bard, and it made a factual error in an ad. So, you know, everything's all about ChatGPT, and Google, just ahead of a meeting that the Google senior executives had in Paris, this ad, the Twitter ad dropped talking about Google's Bard AI. And it made a factual error, which I'll show you in just a minute. And after this, the shares of Alphabet, the parent company of Google, dropped by as much as 9% during trading hours last Wednesday. Here's the error. What new discoveries from the James Webb Space Telescope can I tell my 9-year-old about? And there's the answer. The problem is, this is wrong. This is not correct. The JWST took the very first pictures of the planet outside our solar system, when in fact, it did not. The James Webb Telescope did not discover exoplanets. The European Southern Observatory's telescope did that back in 2004. So it's a factual error. Like, that happens in AI, right? The problem was they recorded this screenshot and tweeted it out on the official Google channel. Social media replies indicated that Google could have fact-checked their response by, you know, Googling it, which I think is hilarious. I just think that's funny. So anyway, it's the thing about these AI searches. It's not there yet. It's not to the point of replacing Google and other things as we know it. It is certainly on the way, and it is certainly going to change the face of search as we know it. But they do make factual errors. Like, we've tried some of the work here on the news roundup. We push through AI. You know, take this article and summarize it in 8 bullet points. And we found that some of those summarizations, it just totally made up. Like, it wasn't even in the article. I don't know what it was thinking about. So, you know, you got to fact check it today. But what will it be like in 6 months or next year or in 2 years from now? It's a game changer, y'all. We'll see how it all shakes out. Here's something interesting. WordPress.com is also testing AI-generated images and content. WordPress.com is aiming to create more engaging content for websites, making it easy with AI images. So here's a screenshot. The search: a snowy village with an ice skating pond, small bridge, a library, and shops lit from inside. And there are our AI generated images. Actually, pretty nice, that can then be dropped right there in the editor. Now, this is WordPress.com, but wow, I can see a plugin like that. There are a number of plugins, by the way, that will do this sort of thing right within WordPress. We demoed a couple of those on the webinar last week. Pretty cool. The system can also create blog post introductions by summarizing the content in a few sentences. Automatic has not yet announced when the AI-generated images and content will be available to all users, but it's happening. And we're going to see more and more like that. How about this? If you're a Visual Studio Code user, this is a free text editor, code editor app from Microsoft. ChatGPT is now integrated with the VS Code extension. So CodeGPT allows developers to write code with natural language inputs, just like we did in our webinar demo last week, creating code snippets right there in ChatGPT. It's amazing. It's based on the OpenAI language from ChatGPT. It creates code completions, code summarization, code generation to increase productivity, reduce development time. It's available free on the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, try it out. Or if you're using Visual Studio, try out this edition, Visual Studio Code. We got some more AI news. We just didn't do all of these. ChatGPT passes the Google coding interview for a level 3 engineer salary of $183,000. Yeah, so it's pretty smart. ChatGPT can pass medical licensing exams and the bar. A Colombian judge actually used ChatGPT, creating the ruling for a child medical right case. Pretty interesting. Here's an article on how this person saved, a Medium article, saved 840 minutes in a week by embedding ChatGPT in his email, which is interesting. Here's the inside story of how ChatGPT actually came to be. It's a pretty interesting read. I read some of that last night. If you want to learn how to build a website, just ask ChatGPT. It'll tell you. How about this? OpenAI's tool may help you identify text written by ChatGPT. So if you want to just figure out if this is generated text or not, there's a tool. And this is the funniest article of the week. Here are 7 AI blunders that show the revolution isn't quite here yet. So read that article on Fast Company. It's a lot of fun. A couple other things. Here's that webinar that I've referenced a couple of times. If you missed that last week, I would strongly encourage watching that one, not just because it's my webinar, but this webinar, I think, is the most important one that we've done in the last year. I had the most fun doing it, and it's super helpful. So if you've not really even gotten your feet wet with ChatGPT and AI, watch this webinar, and you'll be blown away. You absolutely will. And last of all, one of the tools that I demonstrated in this iThemes training webinar last week called Get Genie, which is a WordPress-based AI tool, is now on AppSumo with a lifetime deal. So you might want to try it. It has a little few quirks with it that we saw during the demo, but it might be a tool that's worth investing in if you can grab the lifetime deal, play around with it, see if it works for you. All right, let's move to some other news. The WordPress Community Collective has named Alex Stein as its first accessibility fellow. So the WPCC is a newly formed nonprofit dedicated to funding individual WordPress contributors and community-led initiatives. Alex Stein is the first fellow for accessibility. He is a fully blind individual contributor who's been working on the WordPress accessibility team since 2016. That is awesome. Love to see that. Once the Accessibility Fellowship is funded, Stein will continue his work with the accessibility team. He serves as a team rep and also does some private work. That's great to see, and hope more of these things happen over the next several years with the Community Collective. There is a survey that is available for the Make WordPress team, and the learning modules are starting to create for WordPress. 5 to 7 minute survey right there. Take a moment, if you would, over the next week or so and take that survey. It will be helpful to them to set the direction of what kind of learning content needs to be created. Another bit of news, GoDaddy laid off more than 8% of its employees. More than 500 people affected, announced by the CEO last week. Affects employees mostly from the United States, including a number of friends of mine, which very sad to hear that. It spans multiple levels in every division of GoDaddy. We're going to see more tech layoffs, I think, in the weeks to come. Looking at WP acquisitions, Thrive Themes, which is the creator of the Thrive family of themes, the Thrive Architect, Thrive Theme Builder, etc., was acquired by Syed Balki and Awesome Motive, the team behind WP Beginner and Opt-in Monster and others. So interesting acquisition there. WP Overnight, which creates some really nice, actually, WooCommerce plugins, was acquired by the Updraft team. And Jason and Kim Coleman, who are the co-founders of Paid Memberships Pro, have made an investment in Lifter LMS. That's an interesting combination of a membership system and an LMS. They've been working together for a while. These are all good people involved there, both the Colemans and Lifter LMS folks. All right, a few other things worth a look that we discovered in preparing for this month. WordPress needs a design system. Yoast explains here why he thinks the admin area of WordPress should be treated like an operating system. This is a great article on Yoast's blog. I would encourage you to read it. 15 typography trends for 2023. If you're a typography nerd, such as myself, you will enjoy this. And last but not least, Black Press presents how to break into government contracting as a WordPress developer agency. Black Press is a group of African-American individuals, people of color, who are in the WordPress space and helping folks who are other peoples of color to break the barriers and get into other levels of WordPress. So it's great stuff. Great video there on YouTube. All right, last little bit of information here is our WordPress community events. We had a great weekend at WordCamp Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. A lot of fun. It was great to see people in person, including several of the folks who are right here on this webinar today. It was just great to have WordPress things happening live in Birmingham. A number of WordCamps are coming up in the US over the next several months. WordCamp Phoenix is about 6 weeks away, March 24th and 25th. WordCamp Buffalo, New York, May the 6th. WordCamp Montclair in New Jersey, June the 24th. Also, the WordPress Community Summit in WordCamp US is planned for the last third week of August. They're in Washington, D.C. Several global WordCamps this week. WordCamp Asia, they're in Bangkok, Thailand, February 17th through 19th. WordCamp Tour, WordCamp Madrid, I will butcher this probably, is March 11th and 12th. WordCamp Kerala in India, March the 25th. WordCamp Switzerland is on March 31st, April the 1st. WordCamp Europe is in Athens, Greece on on June 8 through 10. Well, folks, that ends the WordPress News Roundup. We got through all those slides much quicker than anticipated. We had 20% more slides and finished right under the wire here. So a lot of things to talk about today. Here is, if you came in late, I'm going to drop in the link to today's slides and the link to the replay in the chat. You can download those so you have the links, especially for many of those articles. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today. We are back tomorrow for iThemes training members for the Fly course, talking all about habits. And then, of course, also for members on Thursday, office hours with yours truly. So until tomorrow, have a great rest of the day. I'll see you back here, 1 o'clock Central tomorrow on iThemes training, where we go further together.